네, 10억 이상 다운로드를 기록한 힐 클라이브 레이싱이라는 게임으로 유명하죠. 자, 핀란드 핑거소프트의 Head of Partnership 마쿠스 바롤라님께서 Innovate, Play, Repeat, The Future in Gaming이라는 흥미로운 주제로 강연을 해주시겠습니다.
Hello, great to see you everyone. And today I will be talking about the future in gaming and a little bit about talking the future. We also need to understand a little bit about the past. So I will start out by telling a little story about my journey and talking. Let's see if this works. Where it's all started was actually when I was 12 years old. I started to think about the wonderful experiences I have in the entertainment industry. I enjoy animated series, I enjoy games with Commodore and PC. And I was thinking that maybe one day I will want to be a programmer. Maybe I should try to learn C++. So I got this book from the library, C++ for Dummies. It caught my attention and I thought that one summer holiday I'm going to spend on just learning, practicing everything in this book. And then I had this dream of making a game about cyberpunk, an adventure, action-adventure game. But I realized that I didn't learn actually graphics programming, so I had to do a text adventure. So I was very limited by that time. We didn't have many game engines. You have to develop everything from scratch. So it was quite undertaking. But I managed to ship my first title just for some friends, family and friends back then. It was in 2000 and I think it was just before 2000, 1997, yeah, that was the year. And from there onwards, I went to school. I studied first business degree in marketing. Then I realized to do a pivot. I wanted to do a pivot into gaming. I applied for work as an associate producer at Digital Chocolate. But in the end, I ended up actually studying games. I felt that I need to really understand what's the magic, what's the secrets of games, how to make them. They felt that if I do a website, it's quite simple. But when you do games, the user interaction is quite magical. There's so much depth to it. So I went to study games in Brazil. And then ultimately I finished my degrees also in software systems and services development in the global environment. So information processing science, data, so basically analytics side. So my background is quite interesting in that sense. I've been fortunate enough to live in Brazil for a couple of years and see a very different culture there, but also ultimately I came back to Finland. I founded a game studio. I worked also for the public sector at the Finnish Tax Administration, combating VAT fraud, helping them improve their analytics pipelines. And ultimately I was also headhunted to Fingersoft as their first CFO. And Fingersoft was founded in 2012 and had a massive hit with Hill Climb Racing. The first game alone has been downloaded 1.8 billion times to date. The second title has been downloaded over 606 million times to date. So it's very big IP. And nowadays my role as head of partnership is elevating that growth, getting the transmedia transition happening as well. We go beyond. Games are bigger than music and movies combined, so nowadays it's the leading entertainment field. And we feel that it's actually something as an entertainment industry we together can be much bigger, so there could be even IPs from games that shift to the big screen. This is some of the games that have shifted my design thinking. I started with Commodore 64 when I was 5 years old in 1990. I played The Last Ninja, was one of my favorite games, and back then IP collaborations were very common. Some of my favorite games were Batman, Rambo 3. There were so many games that actually were not so good, but some of those were, and especially Batman, for example, was very innovative for its time. I will go to much more detail later there about that. But yeah, I've been a player, I've been enjoying, I have had phases of when I love adventure games and I learned English through adventure games. Gaming was always very educative medium for me. I never felt that reading something would be the best way for me to learn. It was actually like by doing, by experiencing, and games provided me the perfect medium for learning. Also, some of my best friendships have been crafted through social gaming and the communities that are there. And one thing about that wall, there was so many boxes, so it's really hard to say which stands out. And that's actually perfect for illustrating what situation we have today in the industry. Today's real competition doesn't really come from other companies. It comes from the extreme clutter of the marketplace. There are so many titles, so many wonderful, beautiful looking games in the market. And we don't really know as consumers where to spend our time. So we take something and we really easily disengage as well. So the market is getting harder and harder. I remember back in my days, in my youth, it was easy to go because there were maybe a limitation of like 10 titles per month, and you'd pick one of those and buy that if you were lucky. I'd got maybe a couple of games, and then with friends we always made exchanges that somebody buys another game so we can play at another friend's place another type of game, so we had to coordinate that. I will be also continuing now to say some of the games that have really engaged me, maybe in unhealthy way as well, like playing way too much, but also that have actually changed my way of thinking for games. And our first game of those was actually Perfect World. It came from the Chinese studio Perfect World, and they had an alpha test in Malaysia. And I, from Finland, using VPN, I got myself as an alpha tester for this game. And I spent a couple of years playing. I actually postponed a little bit of my studies of just living this game, living this virtual world. And it was really eye-opening to see how player community can actually change the economics of the game. And also it both me the idea that games actually, when you do it first as a developer, you have that ideal version in your mind, but ultimately it is the community of the game that will create the game. The community will co-create the value. The community might change the economics of the game if you allow a marketplace in it, such as Perfect World did, but also the community can make or break the game. And that's why oftentimes it might be really important to pay attention to what kind of community managers there are, because if there's corruption, for example, in a competitive game, then many things can happen. So it's very eye-opening. Another game, I thought that, okay, after Perfect World, I thought that I need some healthier things. So FPS, I've been playing them since Wolfenstein, Doom and whatnot, and I was thinking, maybe those are actually good games for me because I can play just a little bit. Well, I was actually lying to myself. Crossfire, very competitive, wonderfully designed game from here, Korea. And also I got the privilege of being in the beta testing in that game, even though I was living in Finland. And that also became an unhealthy habit of playing at least 12 hours a day, very competitively. And I remember that the introduction of helmets was the moment when I disengaged, because my whole strategy revolved of fast-paced headshots. So I was always going with Desert Eagles, running around. And one of the fondest memories of me jumping through like a window after throwing a grenade and mid-air shooting few headshots, and I ultimately killed 5 people, but our team was wiped already, so everybody on the team was looking at me, and it went well, but I wasn't able to finish the last person on the competitive team. But those were like some of the greatest memories. And then lastly but not least, Civilization has always been very big part of mine. And Civilization is a strategy game, and also can take a session, can take easily a day or longer, but that's easier nowadays as I have a daughter, 5 years and a half, so it's easier to break into multiple. If you play with your friends, you can save it after 3 hours and continue another day. So I've easily clocked in thousands of hours in all of these titles. And from these, I want to take the question, and just a quick question to the audience. Just raise your hand if you can remember. Do you remember the first game that truly sparked your imagination? And by sparking imagination, I mean a game that brought you an idea of, hey, wow, these kind of things can be possible in a game that you've never ever thought about before. Is there a title like that? Anyone? Because I will continue and say what was that game for me. It was the Ultima Online. This game, I dreamt about the game before it was launched because of reading on the journals what is possible. And in the end, those things were possible. Ultima Online was one of the very first true MMOs. It also was interesting because it had that player-driven economy that I mentioned of Perfect World already back in the day in Ultima Online. It had a true sandbox. It wasn't non-linear. It was non-linear. So basically, you had open-world gameplay. You weren't limited. You could create different scenarios. It was really interesting, and it brought the PK culture, player kill culture. So it was very highly competitive PvP. It also had the persistent world, so basically you can continue on another day from where you were left off. And the community was amazing. The skill-based progression system is something that made it really cool. I have been already a fan of Ultima series for a long time. And the customization options, those were just mind-blowing. And especially the different events they had on it. And the technological infrastructure, that's something, because I believe actually Ultima Online might be very well one of the first games that brought the server sharding technology into use. And it was mind-numbing at that time because I was thinking that that actually could make it so that you have a virtual world where you have that virtual identity, and it basically evens the playing crowd for everyone. No matter where you're coming from, how your appearance is, everybody can live in a really similar inclusive setting there. And that brings me to the first part of that framework that I will be discussing today. It's the innovation part. So innovation to me, I think it is that it's rethinking what is possible. Basically opening your eyes to the fact that something way beyond what we currently experience could be done. And that's why games is wonderful, because there are many different types of innovation. One is, for example, incremental innovations. It's just small, continuous improvements. That happens in every industry. Then there's the disruptive innovation. Let's say smartphones. I come from Finland, so Nokia. Nokia did the smartphones. They were quite big until Apple came with the touchscreen. And well, Nokia had their touchscreens as well, but ultimately, for a really long while in Finland, the people were thinking that Nokia's market dominance is a position that cannot be crumbled. But we all know what happened, so there happened something. And that's also because there's radical innovation, breakthrough innovations that basically transform entire. And I'd say, like, example for this is the internet. That has been a radical innovation. It became much bigger than we ever could have thought. I remember playing MUD, these text-based online RPGs back in the day in IRC, Internet Relay Chat. And IRC was also something quite interesting because it was developed in the University of Oulu, Finland, the city where I'm from. And I think that that's one of the basics for modern messaging nowadays, like WhatsApp, and those are very, very disruptive. We have that as part of our days. I think like these phones that we have, it's kind of like extension to our identity. If we leave it out, like let's say I'm on a holiday and I leave the phone out, I feel all the time that, hey, there's something missing, because I'm so used to having that there already. But it wasn't like that when I was young. I didn't have phone until I was 15 or 14. And then the process innovation, of course. So how the product is created, how it's delivered and supported. That's something that we ultimately all the time in gaming keep on improving. And one thing that I think is very vital when you're creating games in the future as well, and in the modern times, is constraints. Because I think constraints are one of the most important things what you need to understand in your product. Because if you think about the limitless options, like rethinking what is possible, you have a blank canvas that go anywhere. And the team, everybody might be going in separate ways of the ideas, and the ideation phase is actually a very interesting part, but you have to eventually set the borders where we're going to be building, where we're going to do the innovation in, and that then helps you focus your team effort together into making something much larger. And I'm bringing this Batman, the movie example, because this I played with Commodore 64, and it was one of the best looking games to me. For me, it was like amazing seeing this. And despite the limited color palette, because in Commodore you had only 16 colors, the team came up with this dithering technique that if you break those shades, you can kind of give a sense of depth and get much richer visuals. And that was really eye-opening to me, because a year later at my friend's place, he had an Amiga system. So that's a 12-bit graphic system, way more colors. So I saw the same game, and it looks like this. I was like, oh my god, that's a quite difference. It's the same time, and it was also one of the games that was best produced for every single platform. So it really took into account the options that each platform had, and the visuals were really, really breathtaking at that moment. And it was because they took into the heart of the limitations, and with that, they worked into making the best possible adoption. Just as a one idea for you to think about in your mind is, do you think that innovative games comes firsthand from the independent developers or the established studios? If you believe that the independent studios are more likely to produce innovative games, please raise your hand as a sign. And if you think that the established studios, the big studios, are the ones that will be most likely creating innovative games, don't raise your hand. So I will just check a little status here. So I will have to say that I believe myself that innovative games are more likely to come from smaller independent developers just because of the risk. If we think about the risk, oftentimes big studios go where the IPs are already proven, where the gameplay is proven. Independent, then again, they have to stand out in the market, so they are willing to take the big risks. So oftentimes it might be, but we need both, the small and the big, because the big ones often buy the smaller ones. They provide the ecosystem, they provide the funding, but it's much easier for be the pirate crew initially and go crazy and do really much experimentation. Whatever sticks, then the big one can come help and publish it and make it a big hit. This is the second part of the framework, the play, which means about the importance of broad range of activities that are driven by both curiosity, creativity, and the desire for fun and engagement. So basically, play is much more than just games. We as a children as well, it's really interesting, but it's a uniform culture of play in everywhere in the world. Like no matter whether you're in Korea, in Finland, in Brazil, every kid engaged. It's something that we learn. We are educated through play, and it helps us a lot. And why play is important? It's because there's the learning and development. It's very crucial for our cognitive, social, and emotional development. It continues so through our adult life as well. That's why I believe games are so engaging. People are already hardwired for play. The innovation problem solving also oftentimes comes best through play because it gives us the possibility of forgetting our current boundaries and just going outside the box. Stress relief and well-being in the modern culture is really important as well. We sometimes lose ourselves in the work-life. Work-life balance is quite a big thing, but when we are working in games, we must admit it's a passion industry. We are the ones who are setting the boundaries, and we're very bad at setting the boundaries. we're probably setting them way too high in the sense that we will be working our late evenings. We are working in a global environment, so the time zone differences between the US, Finland, Korea, it's all over the place. So we might be spreading ourselves thin, and that's why it's really important also, because play is important in our field, to also use it as a relaxation method and not to associate it with just work. So I try to, for example, with my kids, sometimes we play Super Mario, especially the new one, The Wonder. That's amazing co-op experience. So I can play it easily with a 6-year-old. Then the social connection for play is really important as well. And I think that's one of the key things for me as well, having built such an international network in my life. It's thanks to play and services that kind of are gamified. Let's say language learning. I practiced back in the day Brazilian Portuguese through Live Mocha, which was a gamified language learning network. And I made lots of great connections there. I made lots of friends. So, while it's really important to learn from our past, I think it's really important to seek to understand this present, how we arrived here, and planning the future success. So if we think about that for a while, it means that we should always be curious. We should get the feel for what the current market is. So that means that we don't forget to actually play games, playing our I'd say even competitors' titles, but playing titles, giving feedback, because we are basically baking a huge cake in this industry, and the entertainment, everybody, the desire for entertainment is big. We're working in the field of technology, but it is also art, so everybody's offering is different, and that's, I think, one of the most distinctive things in Finland, that we share about our failures, our learnings with our competitors, because we don't see them as competitors, we see them as colleagues, just kind of like a brother from another mother. They feel we share, we it might be that our mileage varies. Something that we've done might work for them because their company culture is completely different. There's every single company is unique, so it's better to have some people to share with and hear the different ideas as well, how they are. So repeatedly challenging your own beliefs, because those might be biases. I'm very biased sometimes. And in order to reach your destination, it's always good to think about this, that if you want to reach your destination, keep your eyes on the road and not on the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror being like the past. The past is good. That's how you arrive where you are at the moment. But to arrive at your destination, you have to go step by step. Sometimes it might be that if you are very ambitious, that the ultimate goal is really far and it's huge. But remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. So just realize that you're at least approaching the destination little by little. The industry we're working at is really challenging. We have all the time, well, I'd say like the attention span of the consumer is shorter and shorter as well nowadays. So that provides a challenge. So if we think about the funnel of customer, how our customer life cycle is, we acquire. That's already a big investment. We acquire, you do marketing campaigns and we get them in. Then we want to retain them in the game. The game has to be really engaging and fun. So if it doesn't, you drop the player and that player is lost forever. He's not coming back. So every stage you try to build it, and the goal is also to make social games, because I feel that nowadays, and since the early days even the offline experiences, gaming always has been social for me. Whether it was like sharing a keyboard on PC and playing two players on the same keyboard and having a problem of multiple keys being pressed at the same time, and sometimes another player's controls didn't come through, and having some kind of arguments also through that. We had many interesting sessions like that, but the social engagement, and we talked even like during school time when we weren't playing, we've talked about games, and now we've gone very far from that. We have the influencers, streamers, and people enjoy engaging with games and hearing different views. So that's the ultimate goal. We want to make an engaging game. And when we manage to do that, people usually monetize as well. We want to pay for our great entertainment, so there will be coming more content. So we make live services games. So that game got to the iteration part. Iteration is really important. And by iteration, I mean this adaptive process where we make continuous improvements and repeated cycle after cycle. So the goal there is just to learn from every single step, always learning and refining the ideas so that we get the best possible version of each idea. It's a process that never ends. It's when we are working with live service games, the game is never ready. We just continue serving it for a decade or century, maybe one day. And why? The iteration is important? I'd say because it reduces the risk. But what I mentioned about the big companies, for example, they oftentimes become risk averse. So by iteration, they've already learned that what works, what doesn't, to avoid costly mistakes. Another thing is that it enhances quality. So through refinement, you can get much more polished final results. Let's say that multiplayer technology, for example, for an independent developer, that would be really, really time-consuming thing. Nowadays, we have the luxury of just buying that out. We can get an engine, and then that allows us to focus on the game only, the product. So I'd say it's never been better time to make games than now. So the repeating innovate, like this iteration cycle of innovation, also it encourages innovation, I feel. It creates the space for problem solving and experimentation, so people can get better and better and improve our industry all the time incrementally. If we think about that, the advancements we get, those are the ones that inspire the future of gaming. I think that we create this flywheel of innovation, and it gets all the time bigger and better, but also more options emerge. So we need to be really careful and consistent with our options. And we continue learning from the past, so we are better equipped to make the best entertainment experiences. But while we are working, we need to remember that it's a team effort. I was thinking that I will bring this team shirt from Brazil, because that's something that I continuously think that sometimes happens in the indie games, that we have really ambitious people and they are great individual contributors and they work alone perfectly. But there isn't a place where we teach how to create the best game team, how to work as a team. And oftentimes it might be that those smaller independent developers who have really united team, maybe of 5 to 10 people, they are much more effective than maybe 100-member team from a large company, just because the team spirit is very different. They don't have OKRs, they don't have individual measurement, they just all are in the same ship, having a really crystal clear focus of where to arrive. And that's something that I feel that with the advancements in AI, also allows much greater and bigger gaming experience to be created. But it's also important to notice that it requires the human capital. It requires people to understand what kind of strengths there are in the team and taking care of those individuals, because we're in the passion industry, so it's very easy to lose yourself in the work. So if they burn out, that's a thing that can be offsetting a team for a really long time. And I believe that AI is something that cannot never replace that. And I think that's something that we as an industry need to also pay really much attention to, how to learn to be better teams, how to collaborate. So, how the future can look like. I put here some of my personal key highlights. One of them is, of course, the advancements in AI. So I think that we are now entering this era where the creativity is finally meeting with the automation. So let's say that we have multiple storefronts on the mobile industry. We can make automated pipeline that artists just create a one key art and you get automatically every resolution and store size created of that. So it's not anymore a very tedious manual process. Then again, in other sides as well, we can use automation, like for the automation testing, which has been already a part for a very long time. So coding, you can use AI to just go and iterate through your code as well to see and use it as a sparring partner. And this allows iteration runs to become faster and faster, which of course we're not machines. So the human capital inside is really important. We need to be realistic and think still like how to get people the well-being environment where we can create great games while being effective and doing smart work, but not pushing ourselves so that it would be just a robotic push. I believe that small teams are increasingly more disruptive, and with the current technology, there's one example of 5-member team who did this Valheim game, and we put it in early release. It's a sandbox Viking game, and in 1 month's time, it sold more than 3 million copies. It's just wonderful, thinking 5 people, and nowadays they've got like maybe 12 or 13 team members, and the game has sold already 13 million copies on Steam. It's just mind-numbing that nowadays you have that opportunity. Back in the day, you had to distribute the games through boxes, like those huge serial boxes. Now we have the digital distribution globally. And cloud gaming as well. That's something that democratizes access finally, because some games, especially AAA ones, they are all the time much more resource demanding. And while we get the cloud gaming happen ideally, we can actually enable cross-platform experience. Somebody can be playing on PC or console, others mobile, and the experience is ultimately the same. Another thing is that we have to see, for example, with the Fortnite, players are becoming creators of the value. Streamers bring engagement into the games. User-generated content, like in the platforms like Roblox, are coming over, and people kind of don't expect anymore visually that polished thing. They want just enjoyment and expression. We get these places, these virtual environments, which are places to hang out. So we've already witnessed this sandbox thing, and I believe that in the future it's only becoming more and more prominent, and maybe combined with blockchain ultimately, because blockchain allows this decentralized economies where basically you have player-driven markets. So ultimately the final goal will be that you can take your hard-earned accomplishments in one game to another game, and for it to truly work, we would need some kind of platform that there's actually shared platform across the different titles. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But at the same time, it does bring some challenges, especially from taxation point of view. If you play some game, got some digital asset later on, you get value out of it, the tax authorities would want to charge you for capital gains on that one. So it becomes a bit challenging, but I believe that as an industry we will be able to go through those. It's always that the innovation comes first and then the regulation follows. So especially considering that, I think that on the future we will be increasingly continuing on this path of iteration, learning with every cycle, and ultimately creating this fun experience and fun games. And the creative teams are the ones that will be able to create the games the best. It will consist of individuals who perfect the collaboration. And that's something like what we can learn from the team sports, because oftentimes in the teams, in the sports, you see that it might not be the team that has the best individuals that wins the championship. Usually it might be the best team that actually gets the results. So I remember while I was in Brazil in 2014, there was the World Cup and the infamous match between Brazil and Germany, where Brazil only made one score and Germany kind of was on a repeat cycle of playing like this well-oiled machine, and they had 7-1. It was really heavy for Brazilians to see it, but it also kind of underlined the importance that if there's a team that is putting way too much weight and expectations on one or two individuals, it can collapse. But when you're working actually on a very crystal clear focus of winning the championship, winning the one match as a team, then no matter even there is a one or two casualties in the goal, you still as a team will yield much better results. And I think ultimately that's something that the gaming and the future of gaming should be, that we need to be focused very highly on the creation of best teams, best and the environment, best environments for working in a creative gaming. And that's something that we also at Fingersoft have put a lot of effort into. One concept that we launched last year was that we actually pay 90% salary for 80% work time. And some people thought that that's a bit strange, but we argumented that if we take care of our people and they only work 6 hours a day, those 6 hours are so effective because they are well rested, that they are actually bringing so much value that they deserve 90% of salary. And that was interesting because after that we noticed that people who did that experiment, we had 1/3 of the company doing just 80% work time for a year, and they got much better shape in physical shapes. They started new hobbies, and at work time they were like just radiant. You could see that there's a clear difference. They didn't anymore easily get overworked as well, because they would be really careful to see like, okay, I just need to do those 6 hours a day, not over. If I do over, then I need to actually take it off as soon as possible. So that means that less work if I overwork on another day. And this is one question that I have you as well to think about, especially considering that we're putting to the future. What do you think is more exciting, the games adapting to you, or you as a player adapting to the games? Just let it dive in a little bit on you, because the future might look very different. We are going to get all the time more personalized gaming experiences, as we do already on mobile. We are getting, with advancements of AI, bring in procedural content creation, really smart NPCs that can have really dynamic storytelling. which could actually lead up to very engaging and very different player experiences that players could discuss within each other. I remember one of those adventure games that I really liked back in my youth was Blade Runner. And Blade Runner, for its time, was very innovative because it actually randomizes in the beginning who are replicants and who aren't. So who are these robots? And it might be that one playing time you are yourself a replicant, but on another playing time you actually play and you aren't. So you can play it multiple times. It had maybe 18 different endings, and I remember that since it had that randomization at the beginning, you would need to play it and start it multiple times to get those different storylines. And it was really fun game to play and discuss how different your end might be from another friend's ending. Another thing is augmented reality. We already see it in the gamification of our services. Pokemon Go got lots of people active, going around and catching those Pokemon. Just one more. It's a game that really brought in the social elements as well. Like I remember when it launched and you walk around in the city, you could tell by far like, oh, those guys as well are. That's a Pokemon crew there, and you'd go randomly talking. You didn't really, with mobile games especially, you often didn't have that such a strong physical presence in a game that you would be discussing instead of actually discussing through the phone. You would be discussing live. So that was really cool. But at the same time, there's the virtual reality attachments going, and it detaches us from the current physical space. And that's something that I think that might be one of those things that why AR, for example, will be more successful initially, because it still is more of a blending the fun and games into our physical setting. But at the same time, I think there's much more innovation possible still in this space. And that brings to me this ultimate question that are we ready for this world where gaming experience are not anymore confined to screens, but actually they blend seamlessly with the reality? Are we ready for it that we go to supermarket, for example, and there's gamified experiences during when we shop? Maybe we are. Maybe in the future we have these glasses, for example, that will be augmenting all the time the reality. Maybe it will be something that helps us as we age. Our memory becomes worse. It might be that, for example, me going to conference events, I usually remember faces of people, but the name, it's escaping. So maybe in the future we have that there's already intelligence there, and it's immediately like, okay, CRM kind of connection that, okay, here's Krish, for example, here's John, and it just makes us more engaged in our everyday life. At the ending of this talk, I want to kind of summarize the framework once again, the innovate, play, repeat, because I think it's not. It's kind of catchy phrase. It's something that many in the gaming industry are familiar with, but I think it goes actually beyond. It's a framework of thinking for understanding just how our industry is in a continuous evolution. I remember starting in 2012 really actively in the development scene. And from then on, we already had like many things, many advancements. In the HTML5, I personally was really engaged with the H5 gaming. So I remember optimizing and doing custom physics engine to run on the very first iPad. And that was a fun challenge, and I managed to get it to be smooth there. But then again, maybe it was too early, because nowadays we have we have the WeChat mini games and Kakao shop things, and we have like TikTok also rolling in games, so it's getting now more again into that space. So oftentimes, whether it's pioneering technologies or I say that designing immersive worlds or refining player experience, I think that the loop of creativity, entertainment, and iteration is the key to success in our field. So we need to just realize that not to lose the fun, because oftentimes it might be that we get into the nitpicks of making something of a technological advancement, and just because of that purely. And in the end, we might lose this scope of fun. as designers. So it's not nothing more complex than just that there's an innovation and play, and then we repeat. Innovation, play, repeat. So innovation part highlighting just the importance, like we have to be very forward thinking how we want to shape the games of tomorrow. Because as an industry, we oftentimes might be taking some safe shelter from cloning a game, but we should also think why is there a reason for that game to exist? Why does this game need to exist? There should be, in the most simple form, we should be able, as an independent developer, for example, to be able to argument with a one sentence, like why this game must exist. Then playing it actively and seeing, like, are we going to the wrong direction? Because the play is emphasizing this fact that no matter how advanced technology you have, the core experience of play is what makes games fun, engaging, and meaningful. That's the central, also in the future. And we have to repeat this cycle because it will be impossible to get it right at the first time. It will require oftentimes multiple iteration rounds, and we need to understand that it's just this ongoing cycle of innovation, play testing, learning, just improving the game that allows us to make the best possible game. And our industry is in constant evolution at the moment. So we should understand this cyclical approach that this is actually what's pushing the industry forward. So, for example, those dithering techniques that came from Batman, later on they were used multiple ways, raycasting, many others. Doom, for example, was a really great game. It brought them basically the multiplayer gaming popularized back in the day. Quake was, for its time, wonderful. It was one of those things that I had LAN parties going on, so that's a very communal thing. And those kind of things nowadays, where we're at this moment of global gameplay, which brings some challenges with the technology like lag, but that can be also taken into account when you're developing the game also. So that's, I think, is very important. I included here a little survey. I would really appreciate it if you have some time to scan the code and give some general feedback about my talk, so that I can always improve and learn. These are learning experience as well. And I wanted to have a little bit of time for questions and answers at this end. I'm not sure how well it will be performing at this event, but let's see. So I will go to the next screen just in a moment. So taking in questions if somebody has, it will be really good to talk. And I also included here a QR code for LinkedIn because as we are in the constant evolution in the gaming, I appreciate anybody who wants to continue discussions online, maybe face-to-face as well one day. Please connect with me and let's discuss how we can drive further the flywheel and get the best games possible into the world. Thank you so much, and let's go for the Q&A.
네, 저희 질의응답 시간 한번 가져보도록 하겠습니다. 먼 고려에서 오신 만큼 강연만 끝나고 조금 내려가는 거 조금 아쉬운 것 같은데요. 질의응답 질문 있으시면 손 드시면 저희 마이크 전달해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 네, 질문 있는 분 계실까요? 네, 질문 없으시면 네, 이것으로 마무리하도록. 오케이. 네, 마이크 전달 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Should we have a microphone or?
네, 이쪽 먼저 전달 부탁드릴게요.
Hello. Hello, my name is Victoria. I'm working in advertisement, and usually we promote games to clients. So my question, because in my line of work, I see that certain games are prevalent over others because of the budget and everything. How can we change the way the gaming is represented to people with more creative, interesting games instead of gambling and real money games and things like that?
Thank you, Victoria, for the question. So, how to make interesting and well, like I guess like the big budget oftentimes come from gambling because they have big revenue streams. But the social casino, for example, compared to more entertaining games, I believe that comes from there's this thing that is called K factor, how to make games viral, how to make them social. So I think it actually is one of the more important things would be that how we again start to think about the games, like how to make games that are so interesting that if somebody plays that you would want to watch it and follow it. And also designing the game so that there is the social layer, because I find it repeatedly in my career I've seen so many experienced teams overlook that, and they just think that at the end it's something that at the very last end you'll just add into there. But if you think about them at the last minute, you already don't have those social features then so linked to the core loop, and that's what really makes it worse, because some of like in the advertisement industry as well, it's really important that the game captivates you. So since we have limited attention, it's the hook. Like we only spare 2 seconds, and that's more of then like how can we kind of give that unique selling proposition, like maybe answering that question, why does this game exist within that early immediate loop, like what does it bring to the table? And I think so many games currently nowadays, unfortunately, they don't really have that clear unique selling proposition, and that's what brings the difficulty. Like if the team doesn't know how to answer that, how you as a marketing agency can come up with that either. It will require lots of brainstorming. But thanks for the question.
Thank you.
네,
Yeah.
또 질문 있으실까요? 네, 전달 부탁드리겠습니다.
Hi, Markus.
Hello.
Nice meeting you. I'm Tony from China Indie Game Community.
Hey Tony.
And I want to ask about when you establish a new project.
Excuse me, can you put it a bit closer to the microphone, because I couldn't hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, no.
Okay.
Thanks.
So my question is, if you want to establish a new project on gaming, so will the genre of gameplay prevails, or is the experience you want to deliver through the gaming? Which one is more important, or in a different order?
I think that genre is something that's human created to explain and define the experiences. So I think you never should think about just the genre. It's more of a marketing thing that helps some people fans of certain genre to find relatable games. But I think that always it's really important to just focus on the ultimate end goal. Like if you think about the games, the most important thing is that single page vision statement that just defines the unique selling proposition of the game. What is that game? It's basically one page describing the game in its ideal state, and then the developer journey starts. You get the team engaged around that idea. Even if you do game design documents, they become so huge monsters that people usually don't have the time and attention. But whenever you have some different discussions about the systems designs or mechanics or core of the game, you can always return to that just one page and see like the initial thing, because I think that will be showing in its most beautiful, simple form the game, what it is about, and it will help you so avoid some problems and probably get that like a unique product. So I think that would be the most important. But thanks, really good question. Do you have something more?
Normally, when people want to make game, especially indie game, because they have an idea.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of junior people, they start with the gameplay and the genre. So I think you give them a really good suggestion on how to, what's your goal, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you say, I want to make a Super Mario Brother-like platformer, but this is not your goal. This is the starting point.
Yeah.
Maybe this is not the right starting point. It all depends on what you want to deliver, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tony, for the question.
네, 고맙습니다. 여러분 아쉽지만 저희 시간 관계상 질의응답은 이것으로 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we'll have to conclude the Q&A session here. 네, 유익한 말씀 전해주신 마쿠스 바톨라님께 여러분 큰 박수 한번 보내주시죠.
Thank you very much.